it ends and we count all the way, it's at 10 and then half, so our measurement is 10 and a half. And then I would go around and check and make sure that all students are understanding that. And then I would invite them to try to measure their crayon on their own, and then we would review it together. So if we measure the crayon, I would have them set it up like this on their desk. I kind of walk around and make sure that they have their crayon kind of starting at 0. And then we would go over it together, talk about it, and see that it is closest to 3.5 inches. And it goes a little bit over, but it's not quite to 3 3/4 inches. So then after that, I would talk about the activity that we're doing for the day. So what I would have planned for a lesson like this is we would do some task card activities with the partner. So here is a copy for you. And so I would tell students that there are a total of 24 task cards that are placed around the room, and I would show one as an example. And with a partner, their job is to complete 10 task cards and not all 24. They can choose whatever 10 they want, but I would remind them that when they look at this task card, there's a number in the corner. So for example, this one's 8. So then they need to find the correct number line on here and write their answer. So they would do 10 of those with their partner. And then I would tell them that I would want them all to do the critical thinking question on the bottom. So I'd read the critical thinking question. It says, on a map, 1 inch is equal to 120 miles. There are 4.5 inches between Happyville and Smiletown. How many miles are between the two towns? So together, they're working to answer that more deeper level thinking question. So once they're finished with that, I would have kind of a challenge and fun activity for them, for the students that finish quicker. So I would tell them that this would be at the front of the room after they hand in their assignment. So I can go through and kind of explain to you an example of that. And then they would also need a little stack of cards. So I did an example to kind of show and guide how that would work. So what happens is you take these 7 cards and you put them face down so you can't see the number. So you look at your little staple packet here, and at the end they'll be drawing some sort of character based on the cards they draw and how they measure. So for example, on mine, when I looked at body, I have kind of the oval shaped body, so I picked up card number 4. So then I counted over 4 boxes from the left, and I see my measurement has to be 1.5 inches. So using the ruler, they would have to measure that and then draw each part of the body kind of based on the measurement. So everyone's would turn out a little different.
Yeah.
Mine turned out pretty unique, I would say. And that again would be optional just because depending on the level of student and where they're kind of learning, that would be more of a fun challenge for them to get them more engaged and kind of get them outside just the half measurements, because there's a 1/4 and 3/4 that we had talked about in the whole lesson. So then after that is done, towards the end of the lesson, I would talk with students and we would kind of review. I'd have them turn and talk with a partner about 3 things that they maybe learned today, or 1 question they might have still that I could help them. So I'd give them a few minutes, like a minute or so to talk. I'd kind of walk around and listen to what they have to say, and then I would have some examples of students sharing what they learned. And then for the end of the lesson, I would create a small exit ticket. So with this, students are asked to use a ruler and measure both lines, the length of them, and then come to the conclusion of how long they are. And then in a complete sentence, write the lengths of each line at the bottom of the sheet. So that would be the end, and then at the end I would challenge them to go home that day and kind of see if they can take a ruler around their house and find some more fun things to measure and get that extra practice in. So with that kind of would end my lesson, but there's also quite a few things that I wanted to try to incorporate when I was planning this lesson, obviously. So one of the big things that I'm big on is movement. So with movement with their partner, they're kind of getting up, walking around, and also getting that choice in what task cards they want to do. So that's really important. They're engaging with others and working together as that teamwork component. And then also with the task cards and the exit ticket, there's like a lot of data I can use, so I can get that concrete evidence of did they understand it, did they not, maybe where do they need that extra help and whatnot.
That's good.
And then there's some easy ways, some general differentiation. So with student choice, the critical thinking, the extra with the challenge, kind of get those extra students excited about measuring if they might find that the test card activity might not be as exciting as they want. So once they finish that, they can move on to something more exciting for them. Allowing them to move at their own pace, and then getting that support with a partner. I try to do something cross-curricular, so getting them to write that complete sentence component, having them just thinking about always writing complete sentences and making sure that they're correct in that way. And then some extensions I was thinking about I could do in science, if they're measuring distances, that's always important, like doing different experiments, or even in math, knowing how long something needs to be. And then in social studies, even like when you're looking at a map, you have the map scale and it says, 1 inch is equal to how many miles. So then they could use that to know exactly how accurate they could get it that way. So then I have a copy of my lesson plan if you would like that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So here's,
And if it's possible to share that with me too.
yeah, I can
Brittany.
definitely email it to you or whatever else you want.
Yep, that'd be.
And then as I was planning my lesson, I kept in mind the 6 components of the
I was gonna ask you
profile of a
that, so,
graduate.
yeah. Speak to
So-
me a little bit on that, and how you see each of these C's connecting to your lesson, please.
Yeah, so with character, I had encouraging support in group work, thinking of how others work and feel, encourage them to work hard, asking questions, me asking them questions, them asking me questions. Citizenship, I would encourage respectful and responsible behavior, and also asking about those jobs, so being aware of different jobs as a citizen when you graduate at some point, what different things you could have that way. Collaboration, students working in partners and sharing ideas, having them turning and talking, which also goes with the communication aspect. So they're discussing the answers for their activity, they're turning and talking, and they're talking with me, they might be talking with a pair in the room or anyone else who's around. And then that written communication on the exit ticket is also something that I think is a part of communication. And then creativity, the challenge activity, encourages them to be creative and kind of create something fun, but also doing the math at the same time. And then critical thinking, everyone had to answer that critical thinking question on the task card sheet, so it's not just looking at these task cards and doing it, there's something else that goes a little extra that way. And then the challenge activity also helps students think beyond the half and whole inches, and that's what we talked about. So
Awesome. The lesson helps too, thank you. I like how you connected the 6 C's to this, that was one of the questions that I had. And I can tell it, but I like to hear you say it, and actually this is nice that you've laid it out that way. So tell me, you mentioned at the onset of your lesson, like you would check prior knowledge. So how do you go about assessing what students know prior to you giving the lesson?
I think even in those questions, like the first ones I asked, it was like, what would you use? And maybe depending on how students answer it, you'd say, what would you use if you guess how long it is? And then they say, I would use a ruler or stuff like that. Just kind of seeing if you listen to them talk to each other, kind of gauging, like walking around listening, saying, do they really know this, or do I have to really back up the lesson kind of and then break it down that way?
Right. And so what if that's the case? So you get into, this is what you want to do, but you recognize that a lot of your students aren't ready for that. Or on the flip side, a lot of your students really have mastered this and know that. So how, as a teacher, Brittany, what do you do to provide the additional intervention if needed, or on the flip side, that enrichment if the majority of your kids, or even just a small group of your kids, are ready to move forward because they've shown that they've mastered these skills?
I think if they needed to slow it down, you could have them take that ruler and we would really look at it and we'd say, okay, and have everyone mark on their finger, this is a half inch right here, and then I would go around and then have them measure maybe more things that they have in their desk, get that extra practice. Or if maybe they are ahead and want to do something more exciting, even though I'd have this planned, I could have them, I would say okay, here's a challenge with a partner, I want you to go find something in the room that's 3 inches, and then have them kind of go explore that way, find it, assess that way, and then maybe just come up with a few more challenging questions that could help them.
Okay. So as you were giving this lesson, you know, there's obviously some direct instruction that you're giving here to students, and then there is the partner piece. Was this more independent, these pieces here, or was
The challenge would
the
be
challenge
independent,
more
yeah.
independent pieces? Okay, I was just wondering how that worked. And then lastly, what is your philosophy on homework? You know, what do you believe as a teacher homework should look like, or would look like in your classroom?
I think that homework, I mean, I've always kind of thought that we talked about in a lot of our education classes, and
Mhm.
in student teaching and talking to my teacher, it kind of came clear that she would assign like homework, but it would be like go home and read, or she
Right.
would kind of set like a kindness challenge
Okay.
to go home. So go home and be kind, or help
Okay. Can
someone
I
at
do their
home
profile too, like
be
citizenship
kind. Yeah.
things,
So I don't think, especially at the third grade level, giving them a worksheet and saying go home and do that, like
Mhm.
chances are they might get frustrated if they don't know, or their
Right.
parent could end up helping them.
Right.
I think that finding just like those small things, I mean, at times there probably is homework, like maybe if there's spelling words for the week, they could practice those,
Mhm.
or if they didn't get something done in class, to try to take that home and finish it for the next day.
Right.
But I don't believe that third graders should have homework every
Sure.
day.
Yeah. Okay. And then lastly, you've touched on this, is just overall assessment. I like how you use the exit ticket. So how do you as a teacher use this information then? Yeah, this is the exit ticket. How do you use this? What do you use this for, and how does this guide you in your thinking and planning?
I think I would, so we, in St. Mary's, we use what's called a criteria chart. So for
Mhm.
each standard, you kind of map out all of the important things that you think that all students should know. So if I go through and I see that student A met this, I could check it off and then find ways to kind of incorporate them to find these, or find different activities that could help them build on the skills they maybe still struggle with.
Mhm.
And then, I don't know where I was going with this. Just like writing it all down.